This is October 21st, 2016, and we're in Bellingham, Washington. It's Barbara and David McIntyre, and this is Lillian, and she's visiting us, and we're having some real good talks about what it was like to live in 1925. She was born in 1922, and what it was like to live out on the farm. So go ahead and tell us.
Okay, we lived in a house that was 2 rooms downstairs and 2 rooms upstairs, and that was it. There was no water in the house, and it had to be carried in bucket by bucket. And all the cooking was done with well water, and then the washing and those kind of things were done with the ditch water. The washing, I suppose, every day, hand washing and like that, I can't say that for sure. And the toilet was down at the end of the path.
An outhouse?
And you like an outhouse?
Well, a toilet.
It is an outhouse.
Somebody listening might think it's a regular plumb toilet somewhere down at the end of the path.
Yeah,
it's an outhouse.
Yes, that's what it is. And should I tell that story about Warren?
Sure.
Okay, and one day my brother Warren was sitting and doing his business in the toilet, and his brother Howard was outside with a stick and thought of sticking it through the knothole. It bothered his brother Warren a bit, and he got him in the eye, and there was a sliver in his eye that the family could see and knew it was there. And so off to the hospital or the doctor's office, what they did, and they saved the eye, and never was anything bad came from it, but it took quite a bit of doctoring. And I can remember I was always around, so they had to take me along when they went to doctors and stuff like that. And I can remember one day we took Warren to this doctor with that. And I can't remember what I was going to tell about this.
They took you along to the doctor's office.
Yes. I think we better just knock that out.
All right.
I can't remember.
Okay, that's okay. So did you have electricity in the house, or how'd you heat it? How'd you read, or?
The heating was done by a great big wood stove, and it was mostly a wood stove. We did have coal that we burned in it some. And there was always a story out about cooking in a coal stove like that, because it didn't have much of a temperature gauge on it, and you had to have the fire just right and set just so to bake a cake. You couldn't add the coal while the cake was baking and those kind of things. And the story is that women learned how many pieces of coal or how many cobs of corn they had to put in to bake a cake or to bake their bread. They had little ways that they just had to do it without a thermometer, and they all got good at it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they did.
And my mother baked bread every other day. She always kept yeast going, meaning that it was in a quart bottle. We kept the yeast, and you had to add to it every few. It never could go dry. You always had to keep moisture in it. What you poured out to use for yeast one day, you had to add that much back in it, and that went on and on. It was kind of a story. The woman and her yeast bottles. Every farmer's wife had one.
Yeah. And so she baked that bread in that oven with the coal or wood.
Yes, and they had to know just how long to do these things.
And that stove had a big water reservoir, and
That's
how
right.
you heated water?
We had a big reservoir which hung onto the side of the stove, and it was quite big. I bet it would hold 20, 25 gallons of water. Anyway, it kept that hot water to wash dishes in, and on Saturday night to have our bath. And that's true that farm families did bathe on Saturday night, or ours sure did.
Once a week?
Once a week on Saturday night. That was an old saying, and it was true through those years.
And you got to go first because you were the youngest?
Yep, and I was the only girl, and of course I went first, and so I was one of the lucky ones. And I don't know, I'm sure they changed the water some in between, because they had that hot water in the reservoir. They got all ready to do it, and then the 3 boys had to be bathed, and then I guess Mother and Daddy were the last ones through. Anyway, that's the way the Saturday night bathing went.
So if you're going to read a book at night, you probably had kerosene lamps. Is that how you lit your house? Or oil lamps?
I don't remember not having electricity.
Oh, so you had electricity, okay.
But it was always just thing in the middle of the room on the end of a cord, you know, with the light bulb screwed in it. It wasn't fancy at all.
And you had a car.
I can't remember not having a car. The first car I remember is a Model T, and my mother was always a woman that wanted to do things and know how to do things. So she was one of the first ones to learn to drive a Model T. I remember she was talked about it, being with that Ella Tegan could drive a car. and
Because some men wouldn't let their wives drive.
that's right. That's right. And
But your dad did.
my dad and mother worked together completely. She always could write checks, and a lot of women in those days weren't on their husband's checking account. But mother and daddy worked together as one person when it came to taking care of finances and things.
Well, they were good partners. Didn't you say
They
they
were
talked about
partners.
the farming and when to sell crops, and
Yeah,
she was good at fixing things?
she was really good. I always thought she had a little bit of engineering blood in her. She could fix electrical things around the house. In those days, things weren't thrown away. You fixed things. And she could take some little engine things apart and redo them and figure out how to make them work.
And your dad really respected that.
And Daddy always admired her for that, and he'd have her come out and help him sometime to figure out how to put machinery together. Like, a mower. You'd have to get a blade and put it in, just sew in a mower, and it had to be put in the right way, and she could always do those kind of things and see how they went.
It's pretty good that didn't intimidate him, that he admired that. He respected that.
Yeah,
Because some men wouldn't.
that's true.
So you said that sometime you went down to your first movie in Salt Lake City.
Okay, and I always admire when I think about my daddy. He always had his family do things. We did things a lot more than other farm families did. For instance, when talking movies first came out, it was advertised and around that Salt Lake was going to have the first one, the closest one. And so we got in the car, all 5 of us, wasn't it? And drove to Salt Lake. It's 4, 5, 6 of us in the Model A car to see the first talking movie. And it was Al Jolson. And it was in the sad one where his baby died. I can remember that part of it. Anyway, there was a big lineup, people lined up to see it. Had to stand for quite a while. And I was probably, 5, 6, something like that. And I got to straddle Daddy's shoulders. It was a crowded, and I thought that was sure fun. I sat for 2 or 3 hours atop his shoulders and looked at the crowd. And anyway, we got in to see the movie. And we were the first people that I knew of that saw a talking movie. That was kind of fun, to be in a family that did things like that.
So you were the first one to get a refrigerator and the first one to get things on the block?
No, we weren't like that, because we had the old house that didn't really have space for anything special in it. It was still this great big stove, and we didn't even have an ice box. We had a root cellar, they call it. It was probably a hole in the ground dug about, it was square shaped and dug down about 6 feet. And then there was edging around it, a good tight door that closed down on it. And it stayed quite cool down in the ground like that in the wintertime. And that's the only place we had to keep things cool. And Mother used to do the milk down there so she could get the cream off the top of the milk. She had a big pan she put it in. We'd get the cream off and make the butter in it. And sometime the butter went to town and was sold. When we had a lot of cows being milked at the time, my mother would make the butter.
Did you help her?
All of us would help churn butter, and she'd take it to town. And sometime we took eggs to town if we had a good lot of laying eggs. Why we would hens laying good eggs, a lot of them. Take them to town on Saturday afternoon and take the money for the groceries. The money that came from these produces from home. That was what would help pay for our groceries that we took, that we needed.
When you went to school, did a bus pick you up or did you have to walk?
Buses came in the Moreau School was built in 1912, and it was a brick building out in the country, and it was quite a big 2-story building. Big wide halls to heat. It was so impractical when I look back and think about it, but it was one of the biggest country schools. It was the biggest, I think, probably in all Magic Valley. I don't think there's another 2-story one. So we had a fine big school to go to grade school in. And people had to get their kids there any way they could. And fortunately, we lived a mile from the school, and we walked to school nearly all the time.
All 4 of you? Did you
Mhm.
walk to school with?
Of course, my brothers went so much earlier than I did. Yeah, but they walked. All of us walked to school at that time.
In the winter time, did you get through lots of snow and?
Well, yes, and sometime Daddy would take us with a cart or little wagon of some sort down there. Yes, and we had snow that piled higher than its fence posts. And I can remember walking on the snow so deep and so high and seeing the fence post tops as we walked along. And it doesn't snow like that anymore.
No.
But that was kind of fun.
And you had a dress on, right? Because you had to wear dresses.
Oh, sure. And long socks.
Mhm.
Always long stockings that the girls hated. When it started getting warmer, we'd go to school and take them off, too.
I bet.
Or the other kids did. I never did, Mother.
You didn't. Of course not.
No, of course not.
Well, your mother was a strong woman, wasn't she?
She was a very strong woman. She sure was. And she was smart. I think my mother maybe was exceptionally smart. I think of the things that she did, practical things, just in housekeeping. She knew shortcuts, it seemed like, to do things. And she was such a good manager, could feed so many people in such a short time. And was good with money, and she was just, and so she made my little brothers all their play clothes when they were little. Can you imagine that?
No. Did she make you clothes too?
Oh, I didn't have a dress bought from a store until I was in the 8th grade. She made absolutely all my clothes. And she could make them without a pattern. She had it in her head, and I guess maybe she'd draw a basic pattern as I got bigger. Each year or two, made it a little bit bigger. And we'd look through the Montgomery Ward catalog or the Sears and Roebuck and pick out the dresses that I liked. And sure enough, here would come the dress out, made just like in the catalog.
She was pretty good, wasn't she?
And she nearly always made me underpants. At the time when I was in the lower grades, it was kind of the fashion for little girls to have pants that matched their dresses, and they came out a little bit longer than their dresses. They had elastic bottom, and so I had about the prettiest clothes in grade school, I'm sure. And she sewed for all of us.
It's hard to imagine how they found time to haul that water in and do all that cooking and still do all the sewing and cleaning, and that's a lot of work, isn't it?
It's amazing.